Hi, this is Julie with Beadaholique, and in this video I want to show you how to bead weave a watch strap, and we're going to be using Miyuki Delica seed beads and Peyote stitch. Now for the purpose of the video, I'm going to be doing a pretty striped pattern, but just to show you the wide variety of designs you can do with this technique, I have a leopard print watch here. So it's the watch face has that leopard print, and I mimicked the pattern in the watch band using the seed beads and just that peyote stitch. So a lot of different possibilities of what you can do with this technique. So for this particular video, we're going to be using this watch face. You're going to need 2 watch strap adapters, which is going to make it so that we can easily attach our bead weaving to our watch face. You're going to need a clasp. I have an Elegant Elements clasp right here. And again, it's the 3-strand clasp as well. 3 colors of seed beads. I've got jet, I've got steel metallic, and then I have this pretty opaque agate blue, which is very close to the 2016 Pantone Color of the Year Serenity. So I thought that would be a really pretty pop of color. And here's the pattern we're going to be doing. We're going to be using FireLine smoke thread, size 0.008, then a beading needle, a pair of scissors, and a pair of chain nose pliers. And then in terms of our peyote stitch, the pattern is going to be 14 columns wide by however many rows you want for your particular watch strap. That will help to dictate the actual length of the watch strap. So without further ado, let me show you how to go about making this. First off, we're going to attach these watch band adapters to the lug bars of our watch face. Now these are 18 millimeters across, so if you are picking out a different watch face, just make sure that it will fit these adapters. You're going to slip them over the bar, like so. And you see they kind of grab the bar, and then you need to close their loops. And you're just going to do that with a pair of chain nose pliers. There we go, and do that to both sides. So one side is attached, and now we're going to do the other side. Okay, and now we are ready to start our bead weaving. So for the thread, I always recommend working with as much thread as you are comfortable with, which is going to be a little bit different for everybody. But it's nice if you can kind of go to your limit of how much is comfortable so you don't have to add more thread as you go. For me, it's 6 to 7 feet. So now we're ready to begin beading our watch strap. And the first bead we're going to string on is a stopper bead. So I just have a random bead, and I'm going to slide it down my thread. And I want to leave a tail of about 12 to 14 inches because I'm going to need to rethread my needle onto this tail at the end and use this part of the thread to attach my clasp. So go ahead, slide that stopper bead down and then go back through it like so. And that is going to trap the bead right there, but it'll also be really easy to pull that bead out at the end. So for our pattern, this is my little sample swatch. We're doing 14 columns, which are here. These are going to be nice long columns. And the number of rows you're going to do is really going to depend on how long you want your watch strap to be. So we'll determine that as we go. This is flat, even count peyote, so we want an even number of beads. And I've already measured to get a beadwork that's in line with the width of the adapters as well as the clasp. 14 beads across is a really nice length. So we're going to go ahead and put on 14 beads. We're going to start with a black one, followed by 2 of the steel colored, and then we're going to want 8 of this pretty blue. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 8. 2 more steel, and 1 more black. And this constitutes our first row. And you can see here how that's going to line up. Quick little tip here, if you're wanting to do a wider band, just do this for your first row. Put your beads on your needle and line it up so then you can see how it will look against your watch. Or perhaps you're using size 10-0 or a different size bead, you can do the same thing. That gives you a nice visual cue as to how it's going to look. So we already know that this is what we want, so we're going to slide those beads down towards our stopper bead, and now we're ready to do our second row. So for our second row, because we're doing stripes, we want the same color to sit on top of each other. So I'm going to be turning my thread around, so the first bead of the second row is also going to be black. So I'm going to take a black bead, put it on my needle, and now I'm going to go through that second to last bead that I strung, which is the silver one. So I'm jumping over my black one, going through the silver, and pulling it down. Now this is where you have to do a little bit of wiggling, and it's only in the first row, perhaps 2 rows, that you're going to have to wiggle a little bit and work on your tension, but then it's going to get to be really nice and easy and smooth to do. So we want these 2 black beads to sit on top of each other. And you just kind of need to make them do it. Okay, there we go. Almost. There we go. So now they're sitting on top of each other. And that is the most difficult step of all of peyote. Once you're done with that, it gets really easy. So this is a great stitch for a beginner if you're new to bead weaving, because this is one of the easier ones. So now the next one we want is another steel colored one, because again, we're doing the rows. So we're gonna skip over this second bead here and go through the first blue one. And I really like working with the Miyuki Delicas for this because they lock in place because of their cylindric shape. There we go. So it's sitting on top of the other steel colored one. So now we want another blue one. Again, you're going to skip over one. So basically the one it's going to sit on top of is the one you skip over. Go through the next bead. Now there's also something called odd count peyote, which is really fun to do as well and allows you to do chevron shapes and arrows, things where you want a middle point. You could do that for this watch band as well. It would just be a different stitch technique when you do your turnaround. And we do have a video on Beadaholique.com showing you how to do that as well. Okay, so we need another blue. Oops, I've got 2 on there. Okay, again, skip over a bead, go through the next one. You can see what's happening here. Okay, now we're getting into that steel color again. So the next one I'm going to pick up is going to be steel colored. And then we're exiting the black one. Make sure you don't exit the stopper bead though. Okay, so there we go. That is the first little section that we've done. So you see that it is starting to already take the shape of these nice stripes. So we're ready to go ahead and start our next row. So the first bead on our next row is going to be black again because we want it to sit on top of this black bead. But starting this row is a whole lot easier than starting that last one because these are already nicely locked in place. There we go, and now a silver. I'm using silver and steel interchangeably here. If you are looking to purchase these beads, they are steel metallic colored, but I think they have a really pretty silvery tone to them. So we're just following our pattern. So basically, you see these little gaps right here? Those are where your beads are going. Okay, I'm going to do another row after this one, and then I'm going to do some beading off camera here just because it is pretty repetitive. I want to save some time so that we can then get to the part where I show you how to figure out how much beading you need in terms of the length, and then also how to attach it to those watch band adapters as well as the clasp. All right, so I'm going to do one more here. So we're ready to do the next row. I find it easier to flip my piece back and forth. So I like my thread up top. So I just flipped it. And that way I'm working down, I'm working towards me. So a black one, steel, blue, okay, one more steel colored one. Oops. All right, so that is what we've got. You can see it's a nice start. And like I did just mention, I'm going to do some off camera here, but I do want to bring a ruler over so you can see this watch sample that we've already done to give you an idea of how much you're going to need to bead. So this watch sample ends up being about 7 inches long, but because of the curvature of the actual watch face, it actually wears more like a 7.5 inch watch or bracelet. So I'm going to mimic the beading here. So I'm going to do about 1.75 inches of beadwork here for my segment. And I'm actually going to do 2 of those because there's 2 panels. And then I'm going to show you how to attach the clasp as well as the watch adapters, which is the exact same technique for both. So now I'm going to go do some beading and I'll be right back. I finished my 2 identical panels here, and I want to show you how they're going to look when they are worked into a watch strap. So you can see it's really starting to look like a nice piece of jewelry. And you'll also note that all of my ends are unfinished. I haven't tied in any of my threads at this point because I'm going to be using all of these threads again. So we are going to actually attach the clasp part first, and then we're going to attach the single piece. So once the clasp is attached, we're going to be attaching this one single piece to the actual watch face, and I'm going to show you in a moment why we're going to do that. But let's go ahead and attach the actual clasp. So I still have a needle on one of these guys. Here it is. So we're going to be using all 3 loops of the clasp, and we're going to be creating little bead bridges to get to the loops. So I'm going to pick up 2 black beads and 1 of these pretty blue beads. Slide those guys down. And now I'm going to go through the loop on one side of the clasp, and I'm going to go back down through that blue bead. And then pull it so that those beads are nice and snug. And then I'm going to pick up 2 of the steel colored beads, and I'm going to go through, so I'm going to skip this top bead right here, and then I'm going to go through the second top bead. And when I say top bead, I mean the ones that are poking out. It might be a little easier to see on this example right here. So we started by exiting here. We're going to skip over this one that's poking out more, and then go through the second one. And pull that down. Now we're going to pick up 3 of the blue beads. That's going to be our bridge, because this one we're going to make it a little bit wider, and then we're going to pick up actually a 4th. Now you could choose whatever color you want. I was kind of having fun having purple beads up top. You'll see in this example I had all gold ones. But you know what, now that I look at it, I might want a steel bead to be that middle top one. Maybe even a black one. You can have fun with this pattern. There we go, maybe a black one. I think that'll show up more. Okay, so pull that down, go through the loop. Now it doesn't matter if you go from the front to the back or the back to the front. You just want to make sure you take your needle and go through that loop. And then you want to go back through that last bead. So in this case it's black, that's the one we chose. And pull that down. Now we need 3 more blues. And we are going to look at our beadwork and figure out where we want to go ahead and put our needle through. So the third loop is going to go from here to here. So that means it's through this top bead that we want to go through. So we're exiting. So that one here is, it's easier to show on this example if you're trying to count. So we went up here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's the 5th top bead there. And pull. There we go. And now let's pick up 2 more of the steel ones. 1 more blue, because now we're back to creating a little bit of a shorter bridge of beads. And back through that blue one. We could either do black or we could do the steel at this point. I'm going to do black just so that my sides match. And then go through this last top bead right there. And that is what we have. So at this point, jiggle it around a little bit. You can easily play with the tension right here. So you have it how you want it. Oops, it does jump around the table. So we have just attached that clasp, and at this point we could go ahead and just weave our tail in and trim off our thread, but I actually want to reinforce this because this watch face is pretty heavy, and so I want more than 1 strand that's attached to the clasp on each side. So I'm going to pick up my beadwork, and I'm going to put my needle into the 2nd bead of that row along the side. And I'm going to go up, and I'm going to work my needle and thread all the way back to the beginning, and I want to be exiting that same bead I exited from originally. And I'm just following my old thread path, so I'm not creating any new thread paths. One more, and then we're exiting where we want to be exiting. Okay, now go back up through your beads in the same order. Okay, go through the loop. Go back down through that bead again. And here we go. We're just going to follow the pattern we already created. Through the loop. Come out the other side. at this point, we can finally work our tail into our beadwork and then tie a knot and trim it. So if you aren't familiar with how to do this, a lot of people have different methods. I like to just do a little bit of weaving in. And I'm actually going to try to stick in with the silver beads just because my thread is black and my tail might be more noticeable in the blue beads when I do eventually knot it and trim it. So I'm just going to work into these steel beads a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to poke through my beadwork. At this point, you want to make sure your tail is not too long. Here we go. I don't want it getting in the way. So I've made a loop. Now I'm going to come back up. And you don't want it to get too twisty right here at the end. Even put your finger in it when you pull it down. That helps to prevent it from getting too twisted. And then go through the loop and bring that knot down to your beadwork. And then do a little bit more weaving. I'm just going to show you how to tie this off once, because this is going to be the same technique for all your threads, but I will show you this one time in case you're not familiar with it. That way you don't have to go search for another video about how to do this. All right, so again, we've got that loop. Go back up. Oops, so my loop came out, and that's because I went back up the same exact area where I went down, so that I wasn't catching any of the thread bridges under here. Let's see if this will do it. Okay, so it looks like my needle's coming up through that loop, and there we go. So we caught a thread bridge under there. Okay, pull. You can see we don't see my knots anywhere. Let's do a little bit more weaving. And then you can just trim your thread. If you have a thread zapper, it's really great. You can trim it really nice and close, but you can also just use a regular pair of scissors. I like to pull the thread pretty tight and snip it. And then we are done with that section. So now we want to attach the other panel. So we're going to do it. Here we go. Laying it out. So it's going to go right here for us, and we left that thread that we ended with before, so I didn't trim my thread like I mentioned or weave it in. So this was the thread that my needle was originally on when I was doing all my weaving. Just going to go ahead and put a needle back on it. And now we're going to follow the same pattern. I do recommend, at least to start, keeping your clasp in the closed position, just because if you have it open like this, it might be a little confusing as to how you orient it on here. But if it's in the closed position, you know exactly where it's going to line up. It doesn't matter so much with a stripe where a panel could go any which way, but if you are doing a pattern piece, it will make a difference. So we're going to pick up 2 black beads, a blue bead, go through the loop, and then back down through that blue bead. And then we're going to pick up 2 of the steel. And go through that second top protruding bead. There we go. And now 3 of the blues and a black. Through the loop. And through the black one again. And pull that down. And 3 more of your blues. this point, our clasp is properly oriented. We know it is, so if you want to get rid of this part and have less to work with, you can. So this is now a little bit easier. But now we know we're facing the right direction for our clasp. And then we can follow the same pattern we did here, which would be 2 more steel and another blue. Oops. That popped out because I went through my hole in the same direction. That won't work. Okay, so here we go. Now loop around and down through that blue. And 2 more black. And through that last top bead. Oops, looks like I did a little thing here where I went through my own thread path. There we go. So for this one, you'll do the same thing you did before, where you'll work your needle all the way back, go up through them again, and then weave in your tail and tie it off. Our clasp is now nicely attached, so this is what we have. And I wanted you to attach the clasp first, and now I'm going to show you why. So I'm going to model this on my wrist. Just do note, I have a particularly small wrist. It's about 5 3/4 inches, so it's a little bit hard sometimes to demo things like this on it. But here's the watch face, and I wanted you to attach the clasp first so you had one nice even band that you could try to see the sizing with. So for me, if I was going to do this watch, I would have actually needed to stop my beadwork a little bit sooner, because you see where we're at is actually overlapping those loops, and that's not taking into account the little bead bridges we're going to do to attach it to the adapter. But again, my wrist is super small and that would probably not work for most people. So this is probably a good size for a lot of people. But that's how you're going to gauge it if you're making it for yourself. You're going to put this on your wrist, and you're going to take the band and you're going to loop it around to see where it falls. Also, that's why I stopped my beadwork a little bit early. If you see the size here, let me do a side-by-side comparison. So you see right here, this one's a little bit shorter. I did that on purpose so that if you were sizing it, you would have a little bit shorter to look at, and then you can always add more beads if you need it to be longer. So it just would save the time of having to undo any beadwork if you stop a little bit early and then just add more as needed. So those are a couple little design tip notes to just kind of keep in mind. But now let's go ahead and attach this to our watch face. Let me pull out the stopper bead. A really easy way to do that is to just put your needle in it and pull, and it will come right out. And we're just going to use the exact same method to attach the beadwork to the adapters as we did to the clasp. Just make sure your clasp is facing up, so you don't want it to be backwards at this point. So rethread your needle. And you'll sometimes see I pinch the thread a little bit, and I'm taking it between my finger and my thumbnail, and I'm just flattening the tip of the thread. It makes it a little bit easier to place onto your needle. Okay, so we're going to follow the exact same pattern. So 2 black beads, 1 blue, go through the loop. These are closed loops, which is great. They're not open. They don't have a slit that your thread is going to pop through, and then go back through that blue bead. And then 2 of your silver. There you go. Then we're going to do 3 blues. 1, 2, 3, and 1 black. Go through that loop. Come back through that black bead. And it's okay if your tension's not great at this point. At the very end, we're going to be able to tighten it up. Then 3 more of your blue, and I'm actually purposefully keeping it a little bit looser so you can see what's happening here. You can make it tighter as you go though. Okay, and then we need 2 more steel, 1 more blue, through the blue, 2 more black, through that end black bead, and let's just pull it so it tightens it all up. And then if you need to work with it a little bit, there we go. And now you will just do exactly what you did before. We're going to run your thread all the way back to the beginning and up through again and then tie it off. And then you are also going to do that for the other side. And I'm going to recommend, just like how we kept the clasp shut to begin with, when you first start doing the other side, keep this panel complete. Go up to here, start doing your beadwork, and then once you've gotten to that second loop, at that point, you can release the clasp so you don't have as much bulk that you're working with as you're doing your beadwork. But that is what there is to it to create a watch band. And I'm going to just finish it off camera because, again, it's a time-saving thing. The technique is the same. It's not changing at all, but I do want to show you at the end of this video what the finished piece does look like. Here's our finished piece. So you can see we've got that watch band attached everywhere, and it is ready to be worn and enjoyed. And then I just did want to give you one final little design, just snippet, I guess it is. It's not really a tip, it's just something to take in mind. So on this example here for the leopard print, I used all matte beads, so they don't really have any shine. They have a little bit of a sheen, but not a gloss. And then in this one, I used all shiny beads. So they just look a little bit different. So when you're thinking about your pattern, you have a lot of choices, of course, for the design you want to do, but also take into account the finish of the beads because that's going to make a difference too in how it looks. You can find these projects, other peyote stitch projects, and all your beading supplies at Beadaholique.com.